right, everyone. Welcome to another Buzz Slayers interview. Today we're here with ARVOW. Is it pronounced ARVOW?
Yeah.
ARVOW. Cool. I like how you have the slash through the O though.
Yeah,
That's cool.
that's all just stylistic.
That's cool. I like it though. It's electronic kind of music. So I'm really excited to have you here because I do want to talk about the Remnants EP that's coming out in 2025, which is right around the corner, but that may not come out until spring. You were saying maybe like a little bit later on. Cool.
Yeah.
Are you planning on dropping any singles leading up to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking just one, maybe two.
Right, just like you did with Last Contact, you dropped Subliminal, I think.
Yeah.
Subliminal was one of my favorites off that. One of the things I wanted to jump into with you was just because you're all right. So for me, like I'm a big film geek. Like I love films, especially sci-fi stuff, things like that. To me, a lot of your stuff, I mean, people would call it different things depending on how they take it in. Obviously, it's electronic music, but it's very spacious and vast and cinematic to me because a lot of the times you're using these like big synth pads that like float through the background of the songs. You know what I mean? And they create these atmospheres that, and to me, that's like super like cinematic, that aspect of them. I mean, you also blend in, electronic house, dance, pop, you blend in a lot of stuff with your music. So what I wanted to ask was, do you have a home studio where you do your stuff?
Yeah. This place.
There it is, baby. I was actually going to ask, like, what kind of stuff do you use in terms, do you have like favorite synth mods that you use? Do you use any kind of like full on old school synths? Like, what's your equipment look like?
Honestly, like most of it is in software. I've got this like super cheap M Audio Oxygen 6.1 keyboard.
I know what that is. Yeah. The white one?
Yeah. And then I've got this old guitar which is broken, but it just sounds nice. And then I have this new guitar which I bought recently, which is like my baby.
Let's see that one. What's that one? Let me see.
And this is like the baby.
Is that a Strat?
Yeah.
Ooh, American made, or what kind is it?
American. Yeah.
Ooh, dude, that's I can see the weight of that when you pick it up too.
Yeah. It's so beautiful though. That actually has made a lot more appearances in what's it called? The new album, Remnants.
Yeah.
Actually quite a lot. And I don't actually know how to play the guitar, but I just kind of like mess with it until something sounds good and then edit in the software and it seems to work.
It works awesome. Remnants is sick. I mean, that is a super engulfing, record. And I do want to get into that too, but that's really cool. Well, what kind of like, in terms of the software stuff, like what do you use? You use like Ableton, Logic? What do you use to do your stuff?
Yeah, Ableton all the way. And then like software internally, like most of the time I end up clicking on Serum because it's just a really easy to use thing. You get some ideas, you can change it very easily.
Yeah.
Or stock Ableton ones, or sometimes what's the one? There's a couple things from Output I like, a couple things from Arturia.
Oh, but yeah,
really,
Arturia I've heard of.
Basics. I just stick with the basics.
Do you find yourself finding like synth sounds or synth pads and like kind of messing with the textures of them and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's like where you're like this room that you're in right now, this is like your bubble, dude. This is like your happy place, man. That's awesome, dude. I love to know how people do their thing when it comes to like music and stuff. Like, with your stuff, like I can kind of it's kind of almost like I would picture it in a way where it's like, this is the area that you're in. It could be like 3 a.m. or the sun could be fucking coming up and you're still doing your thing. You're track, when you're in your zone tracking. Do you find that when you do, you obviously you produce and create all your own stuff. So, do you have, a bunch of stuff that never made it places like scratch tracks and you're like, oh, I'm going to toss that. Probably a ton, huh?
Yeah. I don't even want to know. I've got maybe like 3 hard drives that's just like in there. I used to work on a I don't know what they're called, the big standalone Mac computers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I had one of those, and then it just got so slow because it was filled up with so many projects that I've kind of just left it in the room now as like another hard drive.
Yeah.
No, I just use the laptop because it's just so much more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's a horrific amount of
I mean, you
tunes
could
that never made it.
You might go back to it one day and pull some stuff from there. I definitely know what you mean, though. The old iMacs, the iMac, that's standalone. Yeah, those ones do slow down because Macs are tricky like that. Macs, they do the thing where it's like they try and get you to update to their new OS. And then once you do that, then like half your stuff doesn't work. You got to get the new update the Ableton, and then you lose half your sounds and shit. It's like, no, I got to keep it the old, when I would do stuff like that, I would keep the same OS so that I didn't mess things up, but that's a great way to do it. So how did everything, how did it start for you? Like putting together, producing these kind of tracks, where did it all begin?
I mean, do you know what? It all kind of started with trying to make rap beats.
Really?
Because I went to see one. Well, I mean, there was a few moments that really I pinpoint in my childhood that made me like music. One was Michael Jackson back in the early days.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my God. When he died, I was so young and I was so upset and I didn't even know the guy, but I knew his music and I was like,
it affected you. It's still just because you don't know him. I mean, he was, because what happened was even how young you were when he died, he still was this kind of important part of your childhood in a way. So it felt very personal.
Yeah.
Same thing happened for me. Michael Jackson was a huge, just musical influence in general for a lot of people. I was actually going to ask you that too. I was going to ask you your top 5. I know that's a tough one, and people, you might hate me for, and take a minute because, I mean, Michael Jackson's a great one, obviously. I mean, I've seen clips of Michael Jackson where he's, on a stage with like 80, 30 crew of people, and like the dude's playing the keys, and he comes up to the guy and he's like, no, it's got to be like this, and he gets on the keys. He's like, it's like, oh, okay, Michael Jackson's that deep, dude. Like he's in every single thing. So he's a really good one in terms of, and that's like the pop influence too there. Who else would you say really influenced you, even as a kid to now? Like what? Yeah.
I think the key ones are, MJ was the beginning, definitely. I remember like sitting in my room and listening to Billie Jean on repeat while playing like Spyro and stuff. And my mum would be like, can you just shut up? Like singing the same song on repeat. And I'd be like, no, I really like it. Or
it's that bass line.
Man in the Mirror or something. Yeah.
Oh yeah. The bass line for Billie Jean is everything, and you really did, you gave me like a little, I got actually kind of like a little bit of a chill right there because, listening to Billie Jean playing Spyro, dude, PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
You like pinpointed that. That's like a core memory of yours.
Yeah,
dude, right
absolutely.
That's a huge influence on how you became. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also the games probably played a big part as well in some ways, for sure. But I think outside of Michael Jackson, my mum listened to a lot of grunge, punk, emo. So like Nirvana has always been like bread and butter.
Yeah.
And then my dad listened to old school house, like acid house, all the kind of like dance stuff. So, and then my granddad was jazz, like soft soul and jazz. Wow. So I kind of just jumped from like each one, and then I don't know, I feel like they've definitely all played a part in like merging something.
Oh, dude, yeah, because that's a part of your growing up. You're introduced to that kind of stuff. You just got a new Strat sitting next to you, dude. So I would say Nirvana plays a part.
Yeah,
and I think it's really cool that your granddad, listened to jazz, and that your dad is the one that maybe introduced you to the kind of house acid type of electronica music. Definitely. And I think the reason I asked this kind of question, honestly, dude, is because now I can go back even to Remnants. I only listened to Remnants the once since you sent it. I mean, I listened to Last Contact like multiple times. because, you know, back from Subliminal and all that stuff, which is on that record. But for Remnants, I only listened once. But now that I know, now that I have these, like, you know, and this is cool too to know, because I wouldn't have exactly guessed, you know, even Michael Jackson, I probably wouldn't have exactly guessed, to be honest. And it's really interesting to know that the kind of stuff that really influenced you, and this is the music that helped shape you, or kind of change your life, and it affected you in such a great way. And what I like to do is go back to maybe even a record like Remnants now, and go and listen to it and see if I can pick up on that kind of stuff, because you might not even know you're doing it. You might go back and be like, oh, you know what? I can hear actually a little bit of Nirvana in that, some influencers, a little bit of MJ in there, you know. That's some crazy stuff right there if you think about it. So I like to go back now and listen to what you've done now that I know some of your influences. What about, like, playing shows? Do you do live stuff? You perform?
I've done like, from the beginning, I started doing like, these were horrific. Like, there is a high level of embarrassment from back there, but it is the beginning. It's how it began. But I started off doing these sort of, like, I guess it was like sad emo pop sort of tracks, and I'd perform them with a couple friends, and we did like local in Kent, we did London, I did one in Sheffield, one in Leeds, and one of them got a decent amount of people there, but like the music was so cringy. I can't even. It was basically like 16-year-old me talking about how he misses his ex and he loves her and this and that. And it was all that stuff, but it was fun for the moment, for sure. And then now it's like there's some DJing stuff here and there, mainly between Madrid, Valencia, and London.
Yeah.
And yeah, they come up here and there. I'm sort of transitioning, I think, in style, going from more typical housey breaks into more of like an ambient, weird area, to try and put the image of the name really where it should be, I think.
Right.
So yeah, a bit of a transitional point with shows, but hopefully soon. Yeah.
Well, I mean, your stuff, like I said, your stuff is very ambient in general. I mean, you have some breaks, you have some house, you know, you have some dance, you know, you have all that stuff, you know, but it always, almost always has that super expansive backing. And that's kind of what layers that your tracks a lot, you know, as I find. Do you mix your own stuff?
No, I wish I could.
Oh.
It's one thing that I've always struggled with, is finding someone who knows what the vision is.
Yeah.
I lived with a guy last year in London. I lived with two other musicians, and we had a beautiful little house, but it all fell apart. But the one guy there used to mix. He mixed just one track in the end, Present in Chaos. And
I like that one, yeah.
His mixing was just incredible. Like, he worked with Philip Glass, the composer.
Really?
He worked with some huge people, and he was really a huge figure in making ARVOW go from like music in the bedroom that is a bit shit to music that has a bit more like personality and texture.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, he was a big part, but I don't talk on him that much because he ended up being, well, not what I thought, but
right.
In terms of music, great guy. Like, great guy. I owe a lot to him. Really do.
Yeah. Well, President Chaos, that came out last year, right? The President Chaos. And
yeah.
That was like a single on its own. That was a really good one. I did want to touch on that one too, because, you know, the way you made that also kind of was a little bit different from the previous EP, a little bit, because there was like glitchy stuff in there and some samples of things like happening in there. The production of that one was like, and it's long too. It's like almost 6 minutes or something like that, right? It's a pretty long track. But I felt like that track in particular was like a lot of work went into that track, you know, like I felt like you sat there for a long time and really got super deep into the cutting and the editing of stuff, and because there is glitchy elements of in there. You still had those synth pads in there, but it still was, it had those cool glitchy elements in there, and you know, the dance pop overtones, and that was cool too. But the mix on that track was very well done. But the mixes for who'd you get to mix Remnants then?
This is so basically Last Contact. I'm pretty sure he mixed all of them on there except from one. And then Remnants as well was my guy Gleazy, who I've done a couple shows with. He's also on Be Your Own Studio label, and he is like this incredible house producer, but does like kind of can do anything, can do breaks, can do electronica, ambient, like he can do anything, but his mixing and mastering is so particular. And if I turn around to him and say, look, no, this needs changing, this needs changing, this, he does everything and it's fixed straight away. There's no like, oh no, that's not how it should be. Like he follows the vision and he sees the vision, and I'll use him forever now.
Right. No arguments. That's a hard thing to do too, to find, because when it comes to the kind of music that you make, one thing that someone that's not, I guess, a musician would probably not understand is the mixing aspect and how important it is to get the aesthetic that you're going for with music like this, because if the mix is off balance, dude, it's just not going to feel the same. Your stuff, your music, for people that are going to be watching this, ARVOW should be listened to with fucking headphones on. That's how you listen to your music, dude. I've listened to it with regular stuff. With speakers, that was what I mean. Even the very, 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 very first time, a laptop, which is garbage. But this is the kind of stuff you put on headphones, and this way you kind of kick back. See, for me, I don't know if you're gonna know any of these guys, but I'm a bit older. I'm almost 45. I grew up on the East Coast of in New York, and I went to a lot of, during the 90s, I went to like a lot of like raves, early 2000s. I went to a lot of raves and shit like that. Listened to DJs and artists like Frankie Bones and like all these crazy Square Pusher and like shit like that. I'm sure you might know Square Pusher, yeah. And Junkie XL. These are kind of old school dudes, but they were kind of like, for me at that time period, they were kind of game changers. And you could jam on that stuff in the car and it would be sick, you could jam on them at home and it would be cool. But if you put on headphones, you just get engulfed in the stuff, you know what I mean? Like, and your music is like the kind of stuff to get engulfed in because you add that vast undertone. You always have the expansive synth pads going on for the undertones. Now you have some guitars going on through the stuff, and it's like you put on headphones and you go into like it's like an escape, and that's one of my favorite things about the stuff that you do is, and then when you put on the headphones too, you can really pick up on all the layers of things that are happening, like especially in a song like President Chaos, there's a lot of stuff going on at different points in the song. And if you're listening to it like on a laptop, you're not going to pick up on like half the shit, dude. But if you listen to it with headphones, then you're like, oh, sick, and that's the kind of stuff. So this is ARVOW's type of music. For me, you listen to with headphones on, because I'm that kind of dude, in terms of, being a kind of older dude that I love cinematic music. Your stuff is very cinematic. So the mix is a very, very important aspect. People don't really get that if they're not in the game. And the mixing process for this kind of stuff is hard, because if you do a mix with headphones on and then you got to go pop it in the car and you can be like, whoa,
it's completely different. Yeah.
It's like the low end is like, oh, wait a second. Whoa, there's way too much low end. I thought that it was the headphones shit showed me different, but so you got to get a middle ground. So if you find a dude that gets what you're doing, stick with him.
Yeah.
Stick with your dude forever, because he gets what you're doing. And I will give you this. President Chaos does have a sick mix, and there's a lot more happening in that track than a bunch of stuff on Last Contact, for example. Not that Last Contact is like simplified or anything. It's just President Chaos has a bunch of other things happening in it, where I feel like the mix would be a harder thing to approach, but when it comes down to it, finding someone that can mix your stuff is like hugely important. And I think that you found your dude, and you should, you know, keep with it.
Yeah, yeah.
So, you know, that actually makes me think of so I wanted to ask you, have you ever done anything for film or TV or?
I've done some stuff for adverts and
Oh, you
stuff like
have?
that, but I would really love to get into some stuff for film. It's just finding that little pathway in, you
Yeah,
know.
it ain't easy.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can
Yeah.
imagine. But adverts, I guess it's kind of the same, but it's just a bit more boring.
Well, it's just because it's a commercial. I mean, it's like,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, I get that, you know, it's less exciting.
yeah. You can't really build a kind of, you
Just,
know, incredible atmosphere up in like 30 seconds.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't really build a big atmosphere up for, you know, the latest fucking Kia commercial.
Yeah.
Um, but and then you also do remixes of other tracks yourself too, right?
Yeah, that kind of, I did a couple, but then recently, obviously, I've dropped 3 in like the last couple
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
It was basically I realized that I'd finished the EP, but the label didn't have any space to drop it till next year. So I
Oh,
was
is
like,
that what it is?
yeah. So I was like, I have to drop something. Like I got that kind of producer urge of like, I have to drop something.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, basically DM'd like a couple artists. I went to this club and heard this DVD track,
yeah.
and I just sent her a message like, "Oh, can I do a remix?" And she was like, "Yeah." And then the other 2 asked to do a remix, so I had 3 going, and I was just like, "Right, heavy drums, like heavy drums. Let's get these out." And they've all done really well. I think they've done like 30,000 streams between them in like 2 months.
Yeah, I listened to the DVD one. Yeah, this one, the 00045 Forgive.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
sick one. That's why I asked
I'm
about
so
it.
happy with that.
Yeah, and I noticed that you had another one previously to that, you know, like earlier on. But this one was sick, and I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that you did remixes. Honestly, I was like, oh shit, I didn't know he did remixes of stuff himself too. So I want to talk about the label too, because you mentioned, you know, they're you know, kind of controlling the drop and stuff. So how did that come into play? How did you meet the people from the label, and what are they doing with you exactly?
It's a bit of a crazy story, really.
Sure.
It was all during first COVID lockdown,
Right.
and I was like in my room. It was winter. I lived at my parents' house, and I was in this like new room that was yellow and horrible, and like it was horrible. Um, but I had my producer stuff, and I would sit up there in the evenings with like a 6-pack of beer, and I would just try and make music, and it would always end up being this like super spacious ambient sort of thing.
Cool.
It was actually the original Further North tape loop original that's on SoundCloud came from that night.
Oh.
And that night I got this message. No, sorry. I DM'd them because they had a Spotify playlist that I really wanted to be a part of. It had like 16 followers or something, but I was going through Spotify trying to go on any playlist.
Right.
And then he messaged back like, "Oh, I really love this. Send me some more demos. We have a label. We'd love to hear some more." And I was just like, at that, I think I was 19 or something at the point, and I ran downstairs to my parents, was like, "Mom, there's a label," and they were just there like, "What? Nah. It's probably not, mate. Like, it's probably a scam." And
right, something.
yeah. And to be honest, I kind of thought it was a scam as well.
Yeah.
And then like for the next 2 weeks, I was smashing out music, trying to make something that sounded cool that I could send them. I made that Terminal Lucidity track, which is, when I listen back, so simple. It's just a breakbeat with one chop change and then this little melody I came up with. And I sent that and they were like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, years later, we met in London, and the owner was like, "Oh, you're going to play in Madrid next year." And I was just there like, okay. And then it actually happened. And then everything that they have promised, they have given. And I've met some great friends along the way. Now Leon and the Gleezy, the music producer, and
Right, yeah,
Gleezy, master guy.
Right.
So yeah, it's been a long journey with them, but it's been like friendship and like a full community, and there's loads of artists kind of coming up around there that are really cool and just doing something a bit interesting.
Nice, dude. Yeah, I'm always curious about that aspect too, because there's a lot of, a lot of indie kind of labels like that kind of come around, and you don't really know what their agenda is, like you said. It's kind of like a part of you is even like, oh, because and people also have ideas in their head about getting signed to a label, but for what you're doing, especially, it sounds like they're pulling through and doing what they said. So you actually did play Madrid, and you did do all that stuff. Was that crazy? When was that?
Yeah, that was even now, like it feels like it was a dream or something.
Right.
The first one was 2022, and then the second one was 2023.
Wow.
Or no, sorry, 2023 and the beginning of 2024. And yeah, each time it got better and better. And the last time Madrid was like nearly sold out. We had such a good night. It was brilliant. London seems to be a little bit harder. Seems to be like really difficult to make a show seem like anything. I think competing with so many mad club nights, there's, let's say you're doing a house night, there's going to be like 7 other way bigger house people in London just that. So London seems like a difficult place to crack for the minute, but Madrid always seems to just really do nicely.
That's awesome. That definitely sounds like a dream come true scenario right there for you, dude. That's so cool. Definitely. And it's good for other artists and producers and people like that to hear this, because there's people, they need to understand what a good label actually has to offer. They're not going to try to pull things from you. They're going to bring certain opportunity and see if you want to come on board for that opportunity. I'm sure they have like a whole slate of stuff that they're releasing, and they have a schedule for that, and that's why Remnants is getting dropped probably in the spring of this upcoming year, which is going to happen fast. It's only 4 months into the year is spring, so it's going to come fast. But that just shows that they have their shit together, basically. It shows that they have a plan, and that, maybe they're going to help promote it. Did they do anything like tape runs, like cassette tapes or shit? In the US, that's like a big thing. It's like these indie labels do all these cassette tape runs. Do they do that over by you? Or
we've spoken about doing vinyls or cassettes, or potentially Remnants, but we've spoken about it a fair few times now, but it's always just like financially, just it doesn't make sense. But mainly vinyls we look at, and the minimum batch you have to buy is like 200 vinyls, and that's like $2,000.
Yeah.
And realistically, I won't be able to sell 200 vinyls just yet, and I would end up having just like a wall of vinyls of my own vinyl.
Cool. Still cool.
I would like that. That would be cool, but yeah, ideally I'd want to make the money back.
How long did it take you to make Remnants? Did it take like a long time? What do you do? Do you like like come home from a job or something, and then you sit there, you kind of like do your own thing, you get in your zone, you work on that? And also, how do the songs kind of come to you? Do they start with like an idea, or do they start with like a riff, you're riffing on the synth, or do you get a loop, or how does it begin when you to create a song in general?
I think I realized when I was at uni studying music that I was extremely stimulated by visual intake. So I've realized that like going out into the mountains or going out to like a river or a lake, for me is like, it's just like feeding time. It's nice. Incredible. It just all goes in, and I'm very drawn to like the colder months, like Scandinavia, those kind of places. So for Remnants, I was like, I want to go somewhere, lock myself away, and make music that feels like that.
Right.
So I chose the north of Norway and then a town in the north of Sweden. And the north of Norway was like just the most harsh but beautiful landscape I've ever seen in my life. And then Sweden was like extremely stark and rough. Like it was -32. But
Ooh.
me and my mate had this like Airbnb we'd found in the middle of the woods near the mountains. And we just had like a huge sack of wood. We'd chuck the fire in and I'd produce, and he was working on his business. And it was just beautiful. The trip was beautiful. And all of the stimuli came from either a hike, or there was one day I was producing and the sun goes down there at like 2 in the afternoon at that time. So I'm producing, and then I keep working into the night. I eat my dinner, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, there's nothing coming. This is shit. Let me delete this. And then I turn all the lights out. I look out the window, and the northern lights are just sort of going down.
Wow.
And I just was like, oh, ah, never seen them before in my life. And I just got the laptop back out and was like, whoa. And just, that was the first track off Remnants, was completely based on that, and just seeing that right there.
Yeah, isn't it called Aurora?
No, that's the last one as well, which is actually about something else, but the name Aurora just fitted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, basically well picked out.
I find that so cool, dude, because I love that you just feed off fucking nature, you know, to make your music. It's like you need it to be able to create.
Yeah.
So, you know how cool? That's so cool, dude. Like that's like a big, you know, a lot of people, you know, first of all, let me back up. You actually travel to these places to make this record.
Yeah.
That's sick, dude. Man, you know, people, you're really like you are able to take this thing that you're doing, and I like that you make it like a priority. You know, you're like in your actual life. You know, you're young still, probably early 20s. And so I love that you're taking your music and you're making it such a priority, and it's not even like a thing where it's for other people, it's for you, dude. And that's like the coolest part about it. And then you go out and you're like, I'm going to go to Sweden. I'm going to go you're going to go to these places because you know you want to make a record, and you want to go to these places because you know the landscape and the nature of the shit you're going to feed off of that. And that's what the record is actually going to be coming from. So you went and did it, dude. And it takes
even just the cold in general.
Yeah.
Like the whole cold showers thing and stuff like that.
Or cold plunging and all that shit.
Yeah. That is, well, that changed my life 100%. That cut any base layer anxiety out of my life every morning, just by a cold shower.
You do that? You do cold showers?
I have to every morning. I have to. I used to not. And then as soon as I started doing it, I can't not. It is like essential.
Wow. For your mindset.
Yeah. I think it's mainly the fact that first thing in the morning, I get in the shower and I do something that really I don't actually want to do.
Yeah.
so then it makes everything else seem a lot easier, you know?
So yeah, so Remnants again. Remnants is coming out. What's the name of the label again?
It's Be Your Own Studio.
Be Your Own Studio. Okay, so that's the label that's coming out hopefully spring 2025. Remnants. Right now, aside from that, you know, Last Contact is an essential ARVOW record that everyone should be listening to, along with President Chaos, of course, is a great track. And we'll keep a lookout for that. And dude, thank you so much for this. I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, mate. This has been beautiful, really nicely done, and really smooth conversation. It's been really lovely.